Hey there, everybody. Drak here. So this is actually going to be opening up a new segment on the channel because, I like to invent things all the time. Really is just because I try to appeal to as many people as I can, and I'm an overall geek. But this is going to be a new show on the channel called Drak Rants and Drak Raves. And the reason I'm doing it is because there occasionally will be a story or something that happened that I can't necessarily bring to Geek News, or I can't bring to my Let's Plays, or I can't bring to the live streams. And I still want to be able to discuss them, but I didn't really have a medium to do that. The best example that I can give people is, even though on Geek News I am with three other geeks, and we are all interested in similar things, but we're also interested in very different things. The best example is that I'm a big fan of Blizzard games, and aside from Aldo, who maybe plays a few of them, I'm the only one. And so at that point, it's really hard to bring Blizzard-related stories if it's not going to be interesting to the other two panelists, because they're just going to sit there being bored. They don't really have an opinion. They're not Blizzard fans, and therefore they can maybe relate to it in the fact that, like, Alex is a fan of Sega, but they can't necessarily have any input on the stories. So that's what Drak Rants and Drak Raves is about, is that if I can't bring that story to Geek News or anywhere else, I can bring it here, especially if I have some very prominent feelings about it. And it's appropriate because the first episode of Drak Rants and Drak Raves is actually going to be a little bit of both. So the first one is going to be a rant. Unfortunately, this is a question that I get a lot of the time since I am a Blizzard fan. And also that I am a WoW player, and I haven't really done too much as far as like the WoW community, but I am a big fan, and I do speculate and I do theory craft on it, and I'm a big fan of the lore. So I do follow that community. I just don't do anything actively with them, not because I don't want to. This question I get a lot though, and that is, what do I think of how it's ever since like a month ago when Ian Hazzikostas went on I think it was a live Q&A with the developers, or yeah, Q&A with the devs, where he was just kind of explaining the thoughts and processes behind the most recent patch 6.2 Fury of Hellfire, and the reason that they made the decisions that they did. And everybody has immediately sent me messages and just saying, what do you think about how Warlords has gone and where and what it has become? And so the first segment here is going to be a little bit of a rant because, okay, and ignore my squeaky chair. But so I hate to piss off the hardcore WoW people, but Warlords was already a very hard sell for me, and mainly on the premise that, I even said this a couple of times, like when Mists of Pandaria got announced, that was like the ideal expansion for me. That was a completely Asian-themed expansion and really well done. I love the story in Mists of Pandaria compared to other people. And so when I saw Warlords, I may have been a little jaded, like a guy who's had too much cake. Like I got an entire thing of cake and wasn't able to finish it with this. And so when Warlords happened, I was jaded with it because, first of all, it was a time travel expansion, and I wasn't all that keen on a time travel expansion, especially with a bunch of lore that I didn't really know all that well. It was orcs, and more orcs, and I didn't see a lot of the reasoning behind it. But as the beta videos started coming out, I got to see Nobble playing in the beta. I got to see Final Boss TV talk about their thoughts on the beta, and got to see some of the cutscenes and the story that was going to be unveiled in this expansion. I got behind it. I really liked it. I liked the fact that the storytelling was going to get even better, because that's one of the things that I've noticed in WoW progressively, is that the storytelling has gotten better each expansion. And so I was on board with that concept. I loved the cutscenes, and I loved how things were going to get resolved somewhat. And I liked the fact that we were going to get new characters to care about. Aside from, going to time travel-y versions of older orcs that I already did care about. I love Grom Hellscream. He's one of my favorite characters. I wasn't really attached to Gromash. And the main reason is because he's not Grom to me. I'm a Warcraft fan that started at Warcraft 3, and move my way forward. So Warcraft 1 and 2, I know some stuff here and there, but I'm not really attached to those characters as much as everybody else is. So, you know, Warlord Blackhand or Gul'dan is a different story. But anyway, I just wanted to explain that. Then Warlords came out, and I dug myself in. I really loved the storytelling in Shadowmoon Valley and loved the leveling experience, and so much so that I still do it. I still am leveling alts to this day and taking my time with it because I love and appreciate what Blizzard has done. And so the story, I never had a complaint with, and originally the garrison idea was really cool to me. And I loved how it was modeled kind of after the the Star Wars The Old Republic profession system, where you could just basically send a bunch of followers out and you didn't have to worry about it. You could focus on what you wanted to focus on. And originally I liked these ideas, and the raiding and the dungeons were really cool, and I was on board where I was originally jaded by this expansion. Because I just didn't see, you know, originally when it got announced, I didn't see Blizzard's reasoning behind it, aside from they just wanted to bring back some old friends. Then 6.1 kind of came around, and if people don't know what that one is, it was basically adding in new raid content, but not really, because we knew about that raid content. Blackrock Foundry was coming, and really the biggest additions to that were the Garrison Jukebox, which was kind of cool, the selfie cam, which I've used maybe once. Yeah, once. And it's not because I hate my fans or anything like that. It's just like, it's not something I want to do, you know, unless it's like a boss kill or something to that extent. I just don't see a reason to do it. And I'm trying to think of the other major feature that happened. Oh yeah, the heirloom tab got put into the game. And that I've probably had the most coverage in, because I've been leveling alts and going through the garrisons and stuff like that. But as 6.1 wore on, the garrisons kind of wore on me too. Because at that point I'd had a couple of alts level to 100, and trying to keep garrisons up to speed, even with minor maintenance, still does take time. And so that got a little bit frustrating to me. And it also got a little bit big. And also it was kind of frustrating me that my followers were going off on these epic adventures and bringing back such cool loot, but I couldn't go with them, you know? In Tor, I could go with a follower, and I could do all this stuff, and yeah, you can do bodyguard duty in Warlords, but I wanted to be able to, like, I want WoW to eventually at some point think outside the box and actually create, like, and this is never going to happen, but like 5-player instances where you and 4 followers can go in and just have fun. Just because sometimes schedules don't match. So that's where the garrisons really started to weigh down on me. Then 6.2 happened, and this is actually where I'm going to get into the features here on my thoughts. First of all, Tanan Jungle. I like it. Considering it's supposed to be kind of a timeless Isle clone, I find that a little funny, because I hate, if there is one feature that I hated out of Mists, it was the timeless Isle. I hated that thing. I hated that it had no direction. I hated, you know, I thought there was a bunch of storytelling potential kind of wasted. And I wasn't on board with the whole, you need to go out and find adventure for yourself. I can do that, but I don't want to do that for months, you know? And that eventually became the progression in the game, is your alts had to go out to the timeless Isle and grind out gear, and that was not fun for me. I would actually dare say the Warlords experience has been way better. And Tanan Jungle is another good example of that, where it doesn't feel extremely stale by like the 3rd day, because the Timeless Isle totally did that for me. So I loved Tanan Jungle and all that it tried to provide. Hellfire Citadel, the new raid. I love the lore-centric villains that I got out of it. I love the fact that we got a restored Manaroth, because that's a cool idea. Especially since we saw him, that brings everything back to the intro cinematic. We saw him die, and now we get to fight him. So that's really cool. Also, the introduction of Art Command, which is basically saying, yeah, you thought you killed him. No. But the one thing that actually did bother me about it was the whole storyline that eventually Gul'dan wins, and he gets his Fell Horde. So it's basically saying that, yes, what happened, it's basically Blizzard contradicting itself. What would happen if we changed this key event in history, but it still happened? What? I thought we were trying to avoid this. I thought we were trying to create this Iron Horde, and basically what you're saying is, well, it failed and Destiny would resume. Well, that feels like a little bit of a waste of time. Don't get me wrong, I was kind of wondering what you were going to do with Kilrogg, but I like the fact that I got to face a Kargath that was not corrupted, and a Black Hand that was different. And the fact that we had this whole scene, and yeah, sure, it wasn't Grommash that took the first drink, but it still happened. We still had a Fel Horde. Granted, it was a different one, but again, that completely takes the whole time travel aspect and throws it on its legs, or throws it on its head. Because at that point, why did we do this? The other thing is the Garrison campaign continuation. This I liked, mainly because I love it when they flesh out bosses. And they did a really good job of it in the Warlords leveling. We got very clear who Terrangor was, who Cho'Gall was. It wasn't just the lore nerds who knew who they were. You were invested as a new player into who Gul'dan was and why you should care about his downfall. So I love that idea, especially when they did introductions for the bosses of Gorefiend. So that was a really cool concept that I wish they would have done more on. We also got Shadowlord Iskar, which was a new character created because I don't think he's in our existing lore. He's new. Same thing with Rashad, the Arakoa. So I love that story. I also like the fact that they went a little bit more into Kilrogg and how he's not completely in tune with what Gul'dan wants, but he's willing to follow it. And I'm trying to remember the fourth boss that got time in the sun. It was Gorefiend. It was Gorefiend, Shadowlord Iskar, Kilrogg, and that's gonna bother me. I know it's in there somewhere, but ultimately it all led up to its own storyline that was outside of Hellfire Citadel, and it was still interesting to watch. That's gonna bother me, but I will come back to it as soon as it actually comes to me. Was it Sokrathar? No, it was not. It was not Sokrathar. Anyway, the shipyard. This was probably one of my biggest complaints about 6.2 is I have not liked the Garrison shipyard at all. I especially don't like the whole concept that if you fail a mission, it isn't just that you failed, you lose your boat. So all progression on that boat is gone. That pisses me off to a real extent, especially when I'm like going at a 95% completion and then I lose a ship. That is stupid to me. And also the fact that we had to make eventually missions that lasted longer than 5 hours. And that's mostly in the shipyard. So I haven't really appreciated that at all. Mythic Dungeons, I thought it was a great idea, except I would love for the equivalent of... I would love for them to actually expand on this idea and maybe even do like a 5-man raid kind of content, but I don't know if that'll ever happen. Time walking. I knew this was happening eventually, so I wasn't really all that interested in it. I love the fact that we can go back to Burning Crusade or Wrath of the Lich King instances and have our gear scaled down so that it's hard again. That's cool. And also you'll be able to get rewards that are reflecting your current item level. But this was something that I saw that they were going to do eventually. So it wasn't all that surprising to me. And then the adventure journal. This was a good thing for people who don't like going to the War Chief's Command or the Heroes board in Stormwind. And this is just basically you can take it with you. So that was cool, but it was something that needed to happen because in a lot of cases people come back to a new patch and they don't know where to start. So with 6.2, I think overall it's been an okay patch. I still haven't made my way all the way through Hellfire Citadel, and I'm looking forward to that because the bosses keep getting better. at least as far as I'm concerned. But that's not what the main reason that people wanted me to talk about this was the overall thoughts on Warlords of Draenor. And I started jaded, and I'm ending jaded. Especially one thing that really kind of ticked me off was the whole discussion that Ian Hazzikostas came out and said, we do not want to add flying to Draenor. We want you to be able to explore. And I get that. They spend so much time on these landscapes. It makes sense to me. But I also get the other side of that argument is that eventually once you hit a certain point of prestige, you should be able to fly. You know, at least on your main character so that you don't have to pay for flight paths or the flight paths will take too long or whatever reason you want. But I also agreed with his decision, and I love it when developers stick to what they want. I also love it when they listen, but this is one of those times where I got a little frustrated that Blizzard listened. Because they eventually just said, okay, you can fly, but you have to get all of these like 7 or 8 achievements done before you can do that. While I think that was a good compromise, that's one of those things where I kind of wish that Blizzard would have stuck to its guns and said, no, this is why we did it, and it's not because we hate you, it's because we want you to explore this content. Yes, they're big zones. They're supposed to be. You know, that's one of the things that people complained about Cataclysm is, well, the zones were really small. Well, they were small because you were flying in them. You know, you were literally, you know, I think Tom Chilton said it the best. You were literally going up, looking for your next target, going down, killing it, getting your stuff, going right back up. And so everything looks small in that regard. And the zones were really good in Cataclysm. So I'm actually one of those few people that doesn't complain about Vashj'ir. I thought that was at least a good experiment. So if people have a problem with that, I'm sorry. But overall, I don't have like tremendous problems with this expansion. I've stuck with it. I've liked most of the stuff that's come out of it. However, if there was one thing that bothered me the most, it is the amount of money that I had to pay. Because usually, now I get it, they're trying to get expansions out quicker. But if you're going to try and get expansions out quicker, Blizzard, can we at least consider lowering the price? Because it's $40 each time. And I feel a little jilted when in the past couple of expansions, $40 meant I was going to get opening content and I was going to get about 4 patches worth of other content. And technically, I'm going to be stretching this a little bit, but here's the bottom line. Blackrock Foundry was announced. We knew what it was. We knew it was coming later, so it's not exactly new content. We knew about it. So at that point, this expansion got roughly 1 patch's worth of new content. 1. Because 6.1 is nothing but social features. All right? It's great and all that I can change the theme in my garrison. I mostly stick with the garrison theme, however, because I like the theme. I like the fact that I can switch that, but what's going to happen when I leave Draenor? I can't take the jukebox with me. The selfie cam. I'm not going to use that. You know, I hate to say that, guys, but I don't use Twitter that much. People were actually commenting to me that holy crap, I was on Twitter for so much on during E3 coverage. That's the most I've ever been on Twitter. I get on every now and then, but I'm not horribly attached to the medium. Not because I hate it, because, well, I'm kind of an old fuddy-duddy and I'm fixed with what I know. So the selfie cam didn't really add anything for me. And that's the part that gets me the entire time, is where I'm a raider, and I still raid, and I love instance content and raid content because I think that's where Blizzard puts the most polish into their story and into their design. Getting 1 patch's worth of content really frustrated me. Enough to the point where I don't hate you, Blizzard, for it, but I really wish I didn't have to pay $40. And if that's going to be the same case in the next expansion, which did get announced today, then I'm going to be frustrated because I'm going to get sick and tired of paying $40. And actually, in essence, I paid more because I wanted to get the collector's edition for all the added features. Because I love the dev interviews and all that. So if you're going to do something like this, if you want to get expansions out more quickly, at least consider lowering the expansion price, especially when it's going to be less content, because $40 is a lot to dole out, and then all of a sudden find out, you're not going to get your money's worth. And it really feels like this expansion, when I take it down to brass tacks, I did not get my money's worth. So that's the unfortunate part of it. That's going to go ahead and do it, though, for my thoughts on Warlords of Draenor. Overall, I would give it a solid C or B in expansion content, but I am a little jilted as far as price and also the amount of content that was actually given. And also, given what this was supposed to do, I don't think it was sold very well. So I hate to say that, but sorry, Blizzard. But this is actually not the only video I'm going to do today. So these are my thoughts on Warlords of Draenor as a whole. And then you guys can stay tuned in the next little bit, because I'm going to give my thoughts on the new expansion announcement, Legion.